Alright, I am back on my quest for a recurve buck. And tonight I'm sitting on the pinch of all pinches. I mean, my only shot is 5 yards or less. And I'm probably only 8 feet up, so you want to talk about up close and personal. You know, I couldn't go further north or south than this because it gets just too thick. Bunch of cedars, but right here the creek makes a big S, and this tall bank pinches them down right here. In fact, while I was hanging this stand, I had a doe and 2 fawns come by, and I felt like I could have just touched them with the bottom of my recurve. They're so close. I think I got a little bit of cell phone video. But it's pretty cool to be in this tree. I eyed this tree as a potential recurve spot back when I first walked this property, before I even purchased it. So pretty cool to finally be at least trying it. This Big Ten, I've gotten a couple pictures of him lately. I don't have any cameras over in this spot, but it's at least in the ball game, I think, and you know, it's a recurve huntable spot. There's a couple spots that I think I could kill him with my compound, but they just don't set up well for a recurve. You know, the stand is high in the tree and further shots, that type of stuff. So I wanted to come try this. We'll see what happens. You know, the biggest thing, one of the biggest challenges, I should say, with filming is getting them to stop in a situation like this, because your window's so small. So I applied some buck scent, like some dominant buck scent, to this little cedar with the hope of him stopping to smell it. It would give me like a 5-yard quartering away shot if he comes from this direction. So we shall see if he wants to read the script tonight. Either way, it's going to be a pretty fun, intense hunt. Like I said before, not a spot where I expect to see a lot of deer, but you know, maybe I could call him over here and get him to come through this little gap. Well, 6 months removed from that, and it's still a tough one to swallow. You know, all that work and preparation going into trying to kill my first deer with a recurve, and being that close and just not being able to pull it off. It's May right now, and we got a bunch of rain this morning, and so I'm not able to be in the field. So I'm just kind of checking some spots out, and figuring while I'm in here, I'd talk a little bit about this spot, that hunt, and if I could do it over again, what I might do differently, and or you know, if I hunt here moving forward, what I might change. And I talked about it a little bit, but it's such a good pinch right here. I don't know how well you can appreciate it, but you got the creek here, and you got this high bank, and this is the only trail that comes through here. And it's almost too good, and I'll talk about that in a second. But everything was set up perfectly for him to come through here. I don't think he came through very often. I think he was coming in to my rattling sequence. So I guess the first thing that I would probably do differently if I could do it over again was I would rattle a little bit earlier in the evening or earlier in the afternoon. There was at least some wind for the first couple hours of the hunt. And he didn't come right into the rattling antlers. I would say it was 15-20 minutes. But by the time he got in here, because I rattled so late in the evening, the wind had died down to nothing. And obviously being higher, my thermals are falling down in here. So I think that created one additional level of hesitation for him and put him on alert just a little bit more. So obviously anytime that happens, you're gonna get away with less. They're hyper aware of everything when they're nervous. And you know, clearly that hurt me. You can see the oak tree that I was sitting in, everything cleared out. And I mentioned it's almost too good of a pinch. They're coming through there. Most of the deer travel on that side of the creek. Some deer, and I put a camera up afterwards on this tree over here. And deer obviously come through here. It's a good trail. But from what I've seen on the camera, very few of the bigger mature deer come through here. It's a lot of does and fawns and young bucks. I just think that it's so narrow that they probably just don't love not having a really good escape route. Obviously his escape route that night was to jump off this steep high bank, which is obviously not a real natural movement. And of course they do come through here some, like I said, but I think they probably just don't love it. They can't see very far. They can't really go any direction that they want. They're kind of forced through here. So again, you talk about that hyper awareness. You know, if he's nervous of the spot in general, and you add on all these other things, just decreases the odds of success for sure. I'm gonna walk back through here where it widens up a little bit before it gets to this ultimate pinch right here. Work back up this way, and after a few days after the hunt, I did find a tree over there and pick out a tree that if I was gonna come back in here and hunt, probably would have been a better option. I'll kind of look at that a little bit more right now. This is where the trail kind of wise off. Both these trails pinched down to go by where I was hunting. And obviously it's really thick this time of year. It's not as thick in the fall, but I could probably come do some trimming and open up and make it a little more, you know, passable for him. But it was nice because it's so thick right here where it wise. I was able to hear him well before I saw him, and that gave me a little bit of chance to get the camera on and ready. But I suspect he probably came on this lower trail. It's a little bit more open and just leads to more stuff out there. This top trail kind of just goes to the cedar bedding area. You can already tell it's opened up a lot. So it's a little bit more open, pinches down hard right by where I was hunting. So I suspect this little ditch crossing right here is where he came through, and he just hugged the creek until he got up to me. But right here, you see it's a little bit more open. You see that dead cedar branch up there. That's the one I picked out a few days after I hunted him and busted him in that spot. Good little setup there. Gives me a nice room to shoot. It's still a good pinch. It's not as tight as that one, but this is a still very recurve reachable spot. I just think a deer would feel a lot more comfortable through here. Likely a deer would slow down on either side of this little secondary ditch, which always helps out when you're bow hunting tight spots and need to stop a deer. The other thing too is I can see a lot more instead of watching basically a little 5-yard circle, relying on having to hear the deer before they come. You know, I can see them coming a lot more. I can see more of the creek, and so just getting off of that ultimate pinch, I think, would be a lot more beneficial. And also, you know, if a deer's going through where I was hunting, it's just one trail. They're going to one spot or coming from one spot, whereas this one is actually an intersection with a creek crossing. So, you know, a deer, even if a deer doesn't like going through that super tight pinch, you know, they could just be crossing the creek right here too. So I think, again, just getting off that pinch would have helped tremendously. So 1, rattling earlier in the evening. 2, slightly adjusting the spot. You know, it's only about 30 yards further down the trail where it opens up, but adjusting the spot to an area where they're just a little bit more comfortable naturally coming through. And I think back even earlier in that hunt, the does and the young deer that came by first on this trail, they hurried through this pinch. So that is another sign that they don't feel really comfortable. And again, this is a spot that it's not like it was a pressured spot that they knew I was hunting there. It's a new spot, but they still didn't like having to come through that tight of a pinch. So adjusting the spot slightly, that's number 2. Certainly there's some obvious things that, you know, if I could go back and change, I would. Having the camera, you know, maybe in a static position to capture it. Obviously would have gotten a shot if I wasn't messing with the camera. But 2, having my bow in a little bit different position. Again, still new to the recurve game, and I had the bow hanging on a branch, and when I went to get it off, you know, the leaves just jiggled just a little bit, and I think that caught his attention and put me in a tough position. I learned afterwards, based on someone's suggestion, that I could tuck that bottom limb into my rubber boot, and that way it kind of sits there at the ready in front of my body, and I think that probably would have made a difference too. So those are a couple things in the tree that may or may not have led to a shot. And then one more big thing that I would do, having the information I have now, obviously, is to hunt this deer sooner. Last year was a tough year for EHD. We had a lot of EHD kills in our area, and I was waiting on other deer to show up. A lot of times they don't show up, you know, till later in October, and so I passed up a lot of daylight opportunities to hunt this specific deer while I was waiting on other deer to show back up, and unfortunately they just never did. So hunting this deer earlier would have led to more opportunities, unfortunately. And I had a lot of good encounters with him. Obviously got very close, had him in compound range, you know, countless times. Just a lot of really cool encounters. But not too long after this particular encounter, I believe he was killed during the gun seasons here in Iowa. So just kind of ran out of time on that deer, and wish I would have done a little bit differently. Started hunting him early in October because he was so daylight active on the cameras. And no doubt mature buck. It's just, you just never know from year to year when deer are going to show up, if they're going to show up. And more deer did not show up last year than normal due to DHD outbreak. So those are some things I would change. It's always fun to just go back and keep learning, you know, look back on what you could have done differently, and obviously, you know, scouting throughout the off season, you pick up, little things that you may not be thinking about during the heat of the hunting season. So always enjoy this, always just enjoy being out on the property and reminisce on some of these encounters. So summer's almost here, bucks are starting to grow their antlers, and I can't wait to start putting the pieces together for this fall.